the peoples of our entire planet have named the first flights in human history the orbits of peace of Yuri Gagarin and German Titov. Progressive people in all countries of the world call the foreign trips of our cosmonauts the orbits of friendship. Since that memorable morning of April 12th, the dawn of the space age, our hero cosmonauts have visited 16 countries in Europe, the Western Hemisphere, 16 countries, and Asia. A week ago, Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin, together with his wife, Valentina Ivanovna, returned from his latest foreign trip through the countries of Asia. This time, the orbit of friendship stretched beyond the gray peaks of the Hindu Kush and Himalayas to the shores of the Indian Ocean. And millions of residents of Delhi, Lucknow, Bombay, Calcutta, Hyderabad, Colombo, Jaffna, and Kabul were able to meet the Soviet cosmonaut and, through him, welcome the great achievements of Soviet science and technology and express their gratitude to the Soviet Union for its remarkable successes in the development of cosmonautics and its struggle for peace. There are many impressions from this trip, and Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin will now share these impressions with our television viewers. Please, Yuri Alexeyevich.
Our stay in India lasted 8 days. Immediately after our Il-18 landed at the Palam airport in Delhi, a very warm and wonderful welcome was organized at the airfield. We were met by the Prime Minister's daughter, Indira Gandhi. Then, after this meeting, we drove through the surroundings of Delhi and the city itself, and everywhere, on both sides of the streets, our Indian friends welcomed us very warmly and kindly, with flowers in their hands. Then we arrived at the residence of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, where we stayed for 2 days during our time in Delhi. Jawaharlal Nehru paid us a great deal of attention and gave us a very warm and cordial reception. Then, immediately after the meeting with Jawaharlal Nehru, we went to a press conference which had been organized by Indian journalists.
About 300 journalists gathered for it.
Yes, it was a very extensive press conference, and many questions were asked, both of a technical and scientific nature, about how I felt, and a wide variety of questions related to the life and daily routine of the Soviet people. Then, in the evening, a very large public reception took place at a stadium in Delhi. At this reception, as is customary, as is appropriate, and as is standard in that country, they placed garlands of flowers upon us. And, well, on the track of that stadium stood a car covered in flowers. And in this car, we were to complete a lap of honor. Many residents gathered at the stadium who warmly greeted us, shouted welcoming slogans, and waved flowers and small flags, Soviet flags, and Indian flags. It was a very warm, very wonderful welcome. And in that car, well, I, Nehru, and others, well,
Valentina
and Valentina Ivanovna drove around the entire stadium in that car for a lap of honor. Then, at that same stadium, after the exchange of speeches, there was a very interesting performance by children, wasn't there? Nikolai Nikolaevich.
children's sports performance.
Very interesting dances. Children in national costume. It was a very colorful, Very good performance. The next day, we were to have a meeting at an aviation festival at a glider club, not far from Delhi. We arrived at the airfield where we were met very warmly and well by glider pilots, aviators, and Indian athletes. At this meeting, they demonstrated some very good glider piloting. For this festival, they had designed and built their own national Indian glider and asked me to name it.
At first, they wanted to name it Yuri Gagarin.
But they really wanted to name it Yuri Gagarin. Then they offered for me to name this glider. Well, as a sign of the great friendship between our nations, I named the glider Druzhba, friendship, and wrote Druzhba on the side of the glider.
This photograph shows that very moment.
Yes, exactly that moment. We are sitting in the glider with their famous glider pilot. Then we had a very good warm meeting with the residents of Lucknow. Also, from the airfield all along the way, there was a very warm meeting with the residents. It must be said that everywhere our trips were carried out almost entirely in open cars. And the people of India greeted us very warmly everywhere. As soon as they saw the motorcade coming, that there were Soviet people, representatives of the Soviet Union in the cars, they would give us a very warm, friendly ovation. And in Lucknow, that day, the day of our arrival, classes were canceled at the local university and in all the schools. A very warm, very good meeting with the students of Lucknow was organized. They are such young, passionate, expansive people. A huge number of people gathered on the square.
And there were about 100,000 people.
And they behaved in such a friendly way, welcoming us. I told them about the achievements of the Soviet Union, science and technology, and achievements in space flights. They asked many questions, and they have a special interplanetary communications club at the university.
And you are now a lifelong member of that club.
I am very grateful to them for electing me an honorary member of this club. Then in the evening, there was a very good reception hosted by Governor of Lucknow. Present at this reception were,
In general, after our righteous labors, we could have a good meal.
well, as usual, as it should be. Then our journey was to continue to Bombay. And the meetings in Bombay were also of a very warm, very good nature. It must be said that Bombay itself is very well situated. It is considered one of the best European-style cities in the entire East. The Bombay embankment along the bay is very beautiful.
Yes.
And do you remember the whole embankment was plastered with your portraits?
Yes, there were a lot of portraits, Soviet flags, Indian flags. In Bombay, immediately after our arrival, we paid a great deal of attention to the press. And so, right after landing, a press conference was organized at the largest hotel, which turned out to be very interesting. The journalists were very friendly, but they wanted to get more information. There was one inquisitive journalist who really tried to find out who our lead scientists were, the ones involved in the development and execution of space flights. But it was difficult to just answer him by naming those specific people. I told him that after our first space flight, and surely you read the press, and must know about 7,000 top scientists, engineers, technicians, and ordinary workers were awarded Soviet orders and medals. But that didn't seem like enough to him, so he asked me, "But who is your main leader in charge of the launch?" Well, I gave him an answer, and all the journalists were satisfied with it. I said that our chief leader for space flights is
Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev.
And the next day, all the Indian newspapers came out with headlines featuring these words that Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev is the chief organizer and leader of space flights.
In the evening, we had a very good meeting with film actors at one of the largest film studios in India, the largest studio in Delhi, the largest studio in Delhi. It was a very warm and wonderful meeting. And at this meeting, we met the famous film actor
Раджем Капуром.
Who is well known to our audiences.
Yes, from the film The soul of all our meetings in India was the Indo-Soviet Society for Cultural Relations, which does a great deal of work in India. This society has about 200 branches in India. The president of this society is Dr. Baliga, a very famous surgeon.
И
This society always organized large public receptions for us, helped us travel around the country, and helped us meet with the people of India. And so in the evening in Bombay, we met at Dr. Baliga's, his house, or rather, not a house, but his apartment is in a building located on that beautiful embankment on the shore of Bombay Bay. Well, I must say that even though it was December, the temperature there was high, over 20 degrees Celsius, and we even managed to go swimming in that bay.
It was an interesting swim.
Interesting. Then, we were scheduled to visit Calcutta, but I must say, at that time, inquisitive American journalists had obviously tried to bring something there. In Bombay and Calcutta, we saw the magazine Man. And this magazine was designed very interestingly. On the cover of this magazine was depicted, well,
It was a naked woman.
yes, you could say almost naked. A woman, and below the caption, "Did
Gagarin.
really go to space?" And so, next comes an article in which they cast doubt on our space flight. The first space flight, the second space flight. It really is quite funny, honestly. Sort of unserious somehow. And of course, no one took that magazine seriously.
And actually, almost nobody bought it, but books about Soviet cosmonautics were selling very well. About the flights of Soviet spacecraft, including the book by Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin himself, Road to the Stars, released in India.
Which has already been translated into
Many languages.
including our language, and they released it. Then our journey led to Hyderabad. In Hyderabad, a very warm and good welcome from the people of Hyderabad also awaited us. The meeting with the population was very warm. In Hyderabad, we managed to see the Hyderabad Museum. I must say, it is a wonderful museum with remarkable exhibits collected. The museum staff somewhat lamented that they had very few exhibits from the Soviet Union, and they expressed a desire to receive more exhibits. Then we examined the ruins of the famous ancient Golconda. Well, I must say, this was a very interesting tour. There were many photos taken there, but unfortunately they cannot all be shown, and we did not bring them all with us. Then our journey had to be continued to Ceylon. I must say that the nature of this country differs sharply from the nature of India, although they are located not far from each other. It is such tropical vegetation. And when you look at Ceylon from above, everything is covered in greenery. Everything is under palm leaves. And the houses are almost not visible. Even if you take Colombo itself, in the city of Colombo, there is a central street, a central thoroughfare, and literally behind the houses are palms, immediately the forest.
Palms with coconuts.
With coconuts and with very delicious coconut milk. Yes.
Well, generally in Ceylon, they welcomed us, Yuri Alexeyevich, with tremendous force. How so?
Why you? Both me and you. Were you there too? Everywhere along the entire route, red flags were hung and posted. A great many people gathered all along the route. And the airfield is far away, obviously about 20 kilometers from the residence.
І
And a great many people stood on both sides of the street to greet us, and the welcome was generally very warm. That same evening, we paid a visit to the Prime Minister of Ceylon.
Сіріма Бондаранайки.
She was very interested in our stay in Ceylon, in the program of our stay in Ceylon.
The whole family?
Yes, and she also paid a great deal of attention to us. Then, on the next day, we were supposed to make a trip to the southern province, to the city of Gale. Further on, this trip was a total of about 450 kilometers. During the entire journey, we traveled in an open car. Although the sun was scorching, the heat intense, and the humidity very high. Well, no matter. We endured it like this.
You had to speak at rallies 12 times that day.
Well, it had to be done. A great number of people gathered. And when the program scheduled it, the drive through some town, but when we entered the city and saw thousands of people who had gathered to listen to something, to hear some statements, news from the Soviet Union, about the Soviet Union and its achievements, we simply lacked the conscience to refuse. And we could not turn these people down. We gave speeches, and as Nikolai Nikolaevich says, we had to speak up to 12 times. But these speeches weren't very long. During these appearances, of course, you can't tell them everything about our country or our achievements, but they were good meetings. Very good. A large rally was held in Panadura, in Matara. In Matara, the Communist Party of Ceylon organized a very good meeting. And its president, organist, chairman of the Communist Party,
Peter Kieneman.
Peter Kieneman. We had very good meetings. And the communists didn't want to let us go for a long time. They wanted us to stay with them longer. Then, the next day, we were supposed to make a trip
To Kandy. To the central.
to Kandy in the central part of Ceylon. On this trip, we also rode in an open car. During this trip, we laid a wreath on the grave of the assassinated Prime Minister Bandaranaike. And then we drove on to the city of Kandy. A great many people met us. And along the way, we encountered working elephants, which were doing tasks like hauling and dragging trees. Well, the mahouts of these elephants showed us a lot. And we took pictures next to these elephants. Then we toured a very beautiful botanical garden in the city of Kandy. Peradenia. Very fine specimens gathered in an ancient garden. Yes. And I filmed it there with a movie camera. Also, in Colombo, Ceylon, we had a nice meeting with the famous Czechoslovak travelers.
Ганзелкой и Зигмунтом.
Then our meetings continued, and we took a flight to the north of the country. There were good meetings in Anuradhapura, and it was remarkable that at this meeting, a rocket had been built by the residents in the square. On this rocket was written Vostok 3, 1962, but obviously Vostok 3, 4, and 5 will likely fly in 1962. A very good meeting and discussion with the scientists of Ceylon took place.
I remember at the end of that conversation, you told the Ceylonese that the time would come when someone from the Ceylonese youth, trading their snow-white sarong for a space suit, would fly into the expanses of the universe alongside Soviet cosmonauts and other representatives of the awakened East.
Well, that is quite realistic, and I believe in it. Why shouldn't they fly? All peoples deserve to visit space, and there is enough room in space for everyone. Well, our path then led to Afghanistan. A very warm and good reception was organized in Kabul. An honor guard was lined up at the airfield in Kabul. A very warm and good rally took place in Kabul, where we talked about our achievements and our flights into space. Then we visited the Kabul Museum, which also contains very good and interesting exhibits. Then a good meeting took place. We paid a visit to the Prime Minister of Afghanistan, Dawood, where he spoke very warm and kind words about the Soviet scientists who work in Afghanistan and are doing a great job in educating and training Afghan scientists. We also had a very warm and good meeting with the King of Afghanistan.
Мухаммед Захир Шахан.
The king said to us that memories of the Soviet Union and mentions of it are linked in our minds with the name of
Владимира Ильича Ленина.
He said that Lenin is our great friend, and he helped in the formation of Afghanistan. He also spoke very warmly and kindly about our Soviet specialists who work in Afghanistan and who help the Afghan people in the construction of various facilities. He said that where Soviet specialists work, we do not experience difficulties. He told us things like this. He says, I arrive in the south of the country. It's hot. The temperature is high. And of course, there are significant shortcomings. And I asked them, well, how are things here? What is bothering you? What are the shortcomings? But they, he says, tell me with such healthy optimism, it's nothing. Everything is fine with us. We will complete everything. I arrive, he says, in the north of the country where Soviet specialists are working. In the mountains at an altitude of 3.5 kilometers. It is, of course, very difficult to work. And I ask them, how are you living? How are things? They again reply with that same healthy optimism. It's nothing. Everything is fine. We are living well, and we will complete everything that is required of us. This once again shows how high the authority of the Soviet people is in this country and in other countries that we visited. And the king also noted, it is very valuable that our specialists not only build these structures themselves, but alongside this, they directly train national Afghan personnel at these construction sites who will later become qualified staff and work independently on projects in that country. We visited 3 countries, 3 peoples. These peoples have different languages, but all these peoples understand Russian words about peace and friendship. And we were convinced once again of how great the authority of the Soviet Union is and how great the authority of Soviet science and Soviet technology is. How great the role of the Soviet Union, the Soviet people, our dear Communist Party, and the Soviet government is in their struggle for peace, for strengthening friendship between peoples on Earth, and for the progress of all mankind.
Thank you very much, Yuri Alexeyevich, for such an interesting story about your trip abroad. I believe that all viewers will join me in my sincere, heartfelt wish to you, Yuri Alexeyevich, for great new successes in the new year of 62, both in cosmonautics and in your trips abroad, about which you will also tell our viewers later, and, of course, in your studies at the Academy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.